Good evening and welcome to Monsters Among Us. I am your guide, Derek Hayes. Hello folks, and welcome back to another thrilling episode. I imagine many of you are getting ready for the holidays right about now. And there's only a few weeks left in the year 2024 as well. My, time flies. Now, of course, that means our next episode will be our Christmas/winter holiday episode. And the following week will be our yearly best of episode, sharing the best calls of 2024. And after that, we're going to take a little break, which leads me to the introduction for this week's installment. Because I've been so busy producing those other shows that it's left me little time for this week's effort. But luckily, I have a solution for that. You can call it the grab bag. And essentially it means I pick calls at random, without proof listening, and give you my immediate commentary, after only one listen. Think of this as an open hotline or something like that. There's no telling what we'll get tonight. So join me, if you will. To kick off tonight's episode, we begin with a call from the Eastern Seaboard. Eddie from New Jersey. Welcome to the program.
How you doing, Monsters Among Us podcast and all listeners? I'm actually making this call on the fly. I'm driving to pick up my son. I've been binge listening for quite a while, and I figured I'd contribute a little bit. The story I have is nice and short and sweet. So it was in nighttime. I come back from work. The apartment complex I lived in had a dog park. So after getting back home from work, took my dog out, probably about 9, 10 o'clock at night. My dog was just, running around doing his thing. There's a plane in the sky. So I wanted to send her a funny Snapchat, right? So I took a picture, or a video, of the airplane, and I was going to title it, "It's a UFO." And then, laughing, crying emoji or something like that, something stupid. But as I recorded and then replayed the video, it seems I actually caught something. I'll send the video, you receive the videos and I'll check the website. It's just a weird glowing light, just moving in a very erratic pattern. Circles, sideways, left, right, up, down. A little hard to see, but once you spot it, it's hard to miss. My name is Eddie. I'm from New Jersey. That's where my story takes place. And that's pretty much it. My contribution. And I've been listening to podcasts. Really enjoy it. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Now, I purposely pulled a UFO call from the Garden State just so I could talk about what's going on over that way. Drones. Tons of them. Some the size of SUVs. Flying all over the skies above New Jersey. Now, apparently, the FBI has investigated, and according to the government, they have zero idea what these things are, what they're doing here, or where they're coming from. Yet they still somehow can assure us that they pose no threat to the citizens of New Jersey. I'm not buying that. That tells me that they're ours. And if I had to guess, the drones are designed to detect something. Heat, frequencies, radiation, something. Which is why they operate in what seems like a grid pattern. That detail has been reported numerous times over the past couple of weeks. Just my hunches as to what might be going on. Watch the coverage for yourself, and make your own determination. But regardless of your theory, this is something that you should be paying attention to. Sure, it might be on the other side of the country for you, but if they can do it there, they can do it anywhere. Whatever it is. Now, of course, I'll keep tabs on everything that's going on over there and update you all accordingly. But something tells me that we'll never find out. Just like the drone flap in Colorado some 4 or 5 years ago. They were there for months, nightly, on the news and everything. Then one day they weren't, and we never heard another word about it. Now, as for Eddie's video, I have it and it's posted in our show notes, and I'll see if I can get Sarah to post it up on her social media as well. But if you want my personal opinion on this, Eddie, I think we're looking at a reflection on the lens from the actual plane that you're recording. But then again, I implore all of you to watch it on your own and tell me what you think. Either way, thank you again, Eddie, for reporting your super strange experience. Now, folks, I think I can squeeze one more call in before I have to take our first break. So let's give Andrew a shot. He's calling in from the Show Me State of Missouri.
Hey, Derek, this is Andrew from Kansas City again. Man, I just wanted to call and leave another quick story that happened to me one time. This one's a real quick one, I promise. Man, one time I was sleeping, and I'll say something too, is whenever these weird things happen, sorry for interrupting myself, but whenever these weird things happen, you know, you kind of look at it like, what's going on, you know, and then you try to explain away, but whenever there's something with proof, like something left behind, you know, there's UFO sightings, there's burned rings in the grass, you know, whatever it is, whenever there's something that's physical, it kind of makes it all that much more real, you know what I mean? So like I said, quick story. One night, man, dead asleep, and I wake up, breathe. That's just somebody said breathe in my ear. I don't know who it was. I sleep by myself, you know, nobody's in the room with me. I keep my door closed. I didn't hear it open, or, you know, the door opening, closing didn't wake me up. I mean, even if you were to come and look at me, you know, while I'm sleeping, let's say my parents came and checked on me or something, it's not like you're going to see me not breathing or whatever. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. But the weirdest part was the thing that was left over, the proof of it is, you know how whenever somebody whispers in your ear, says something in your ear, it's like their hot breath causes condensation on your ear. And man, I heard the word breathe, and I sat up so fast, and I wiped my ear, man, and there was condensation on my ear. And, you know, the rest of it, I wasn't sweating or anything. The rest of my body wasn't wet. It was just my ear, man. And, you know, I slept, like I said, in the room alone, door closed. I slept up, like, in the corner, up against the wall, kind of huddled up, you know. So they would have had to have been on my bed to be able to talk to me, or, I mean, even if they were leaning over my bed, they would have had to have been pressing on it or something. It's really weird, man. Like I said, it's the things that are left behind that really can throw you off sometimes. All right, later, brief fire.
Thank you, Andrew. You know, I too experienced something similar to that once. It was in the first apartment that Sarah and I shared, just northwest of Pico in La Brea, in Los Angeles. Now, I hadn't yet woken up for the morning, but I heard someone loudly shout, "Hey," right next to me, just as I was about to open my eyes. Now, it really freaked me out at the time, but I think, or at least thought, that it was just my imagination or my exploding head syndrome acting up again. But after listening to Andrew's entry, I guess I shouldn't be so sure. Thank you again, Andrew, for sharing the phone call. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. How do you stay cozy and bring yourself comfort during the winter months? Maybe you wrap yourself up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate and watch movies. Another way to bring yourself comfort that lasts through the season and beyond is taking time for therapy. Therapy can help you take the time to slow down and think about the things you're grateful for and things you would like to continue proving on in your life and within yourself. Speaking from experience, therapy can give you the tools to deal with the hardest days and teaches you how to properly process emotions. Taking time to reflect is crucial for inner growth. Plus, it feels good to be able to get things off your chest. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, which makes it convenient and flexible. Just fill out a quick questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist today. And switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Monsters Among Us to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Monsters Among Us.
Or needs to have some degree of
anything he needs to improve on.
All right, ladies and germs. Tonight's next mystery comes to us from here in California. Matt, welcome to the program.
Hey, Derek. This is Matt from Los Angeles. Big fan of the show. Been listening for about a year and a half. Really enjoy it. I finally had a story that I can submit to you in hopes to get to play it for everyone else in the Monsters Among Us community. Today's Sunday, and they just had that giant tornado in Kentucky that unfortunately killed a lot of people. Now, remember, we live in LA, no connection to Kentucky. We don't watch the news in our house. And I have two kids, a 3.5-year-old and a 2-month-old. Yesterday, Saturday morning, my daughter, when we were up in the morning kind of getting the day going, she asked me randomly, she's 3.5, she said, "Daddy, was there a storm that killed a lot of people?" And I was like thinking in my head, well, yeah, but I just didn't say that at first. I said, "Well, how did you hear that, sweetheart?" She said, "Well, last night I had a dream that Daddy came to my window and told me about it." And so I go, okay, well, what did the storm, look like? What did it do? And she said there was a lot of wind and it had big hands and it moved like this. And she starts spinning both of her hands, kind of clockwise or counterclockwise, whatever. And she doesn't know what a tornado is. She's too young. But I just thought that was pretty insane, that my daughter randomly asks me if there was a storm the night before or earlier that morning that killed a bunch of people, and she knew about it from a daddy who came to her window and told her about it, and then she describes how a tornado moves. Pretty creepy, kind of scary, but also interesting to think that maybe my kid has a little bit of clairvoyancy. And interestingly enough, too, she doesn't sleep very well. She gets up a lot at night and has kind of night terrors. So now I'm starting to kind of look back and wonder if all these times she's been waking up, is it kind of like some sixth sense kind of thing? Are deceased people coming to her in her dreams and telling her their stories? I don't know. I talked to my mom about it. My mom said there's a little bit of clairvoyancy that kind of runs in the family. I don't have it, but my mom said she's got a hint of it. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. It's not a crypto story. I kind of wish it was. I've always wanted to see something in the cryptozoology realm, but I felt this was pretty interesting psychic little occurrence that came up with my kid. So anyway, hope you can use it, and love the show, Derek. Keep it up. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Matt. That sounds like a premonition to me. And coincidentally, I just covered that subject on the latest Tuesday installment. And if you're not tuning into those episodes, you really should be, because you have no idea how much you're missing out on. And if you truly think your daughter might have a gift, Matt, you should keep a journal of all the times she makes a prediction like that, and then note whether or not it came true. After some time passes, and years down the line, psychic or not, I bet she'll be interested in reading all the wild things that she said as a child. And of course, if you or anyone out there listening does something like that, we want to hear about it. And thank you again, Matt, for calling in. Now, folks, if you have a story you would like to share here on the program, a true story, call our hotline at 888-608-NIGHT. That's 888-608-NIGHT. Or you can record your story as a voice memo on your phone and email it to me at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. Now, next up is a strange story out of the state of Illinois. Rich, welcome to the program.
Hey Derek, this is Rich calling out of the state of Illinois, and this morning I was taking my trash cans out, and I got both cans at the end of the driveway, and I noticed that the moon was just lighting everything up. It was so bright, so I turned around from walking back into my house and looked up. So you got the moon and pretty much the constellation Orion right there. They're divided by this big tree my neighbors have across the street. So I was looking up there, looking at Orion, because, that whole constellation is just smack dab right front and center of my house. So I was looking at his belt. So you got like 1, 2, and 3, those stars. And the third star, there was a flash of light that went from the third star to the second star. It was lit up for that whole time. It went from star to star, but then it faded out. And I kept looking up there thinking I would see it, light up again, just in a different area. But nothing. Didn't see, no continuous blinking lights for it being like a plane. Actually, if I were to look on the other side of the tree with the moon, there was a plane up there flying. So, you could see the lights flashing. So I was just taken back, man, what is that? So kept looking up there, and sure enough, about a minute later, there was another blink of light that shot from the 3-star to the second star. And just sitting there bewildered, nothing again. Nothing kept blinking, nothing. I've seen shooting stars, they usually streak across. There was nothing like that. I usually see satellites when I'm out here. Those just look like stars that are just moving. So, I don't know. I don't know what this is. If you got any ideas, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear if anyone else has seen anything like that before. Anyways, love the podcast. Keep up the great work, and can't wait to tune in next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. I'll tell you what. At this point, I've heard enough to know that there is something out there. Something that's intelligent. Much more so than we are. Something that remains unidentified. Or at least hidden from us civilians. So having those beliefs cemented, Rich, I can tell you that it's entirely possible that you saw some sort of visitor. Or at least their craft. Though the skeptic in me feels the need to remind you that there are all sorts of eye disorders that could make it difficult to focus on a pinhole of light, like a distant star. So it's possible that your eye tricked you into seeing something as well. But regardless of which way you lean, we thank you again, Rich, for calling in. Now, folks, I think it's too late to order from our shop if you're planning on Christmas shopping. But the shop will remain open throughout the holidays, just in case you want to make a last-minute order. Just visit monstersamonguspodcast.com and click the shop tab. And as always, we appreciate that support. Now, this next one takes us out of the world of UFOs and UAPs and thrusts us into the realm of cryptids and anthropomorphic creatures. Please welcome Deidre from North Carolina to the program.
Hey Derek, this is Deidre from North Carolina again. I'm just calling about a story or something that happened to me this morning. I was at work. It was 4 o'clock. I was sitting outside the picnic table because it was freezing in our base and I just wanted to get warm, so I just went outside and was sitting at the picnic table just playing on my phone. And I heard this noise off to my left, it was a thud. It was low at first and it became more frequent. And I'm like, what is that noise? So I took my flashlight off my belt and I shined it in the direction of the noise, and there was a coyote there. But what's strange is when I put the light on him, it stood up on its hind legs and ran off into the woods. And I was like, did I just see that correctly? And so I went around and I saw my flashlight shining, and it was standing in the tree line with its paws on a tree, peeking around the tree at me. And it started making this weird noise, and then it dropped down on all fours and then started barking like a coyote barks. But I just think it's so strange that it stood up on two legs and ran to the woods. Like, that's not normal. So it it really freaked me out. So I just thought that was interesting and thought I would share. And if anybody else has seen this, I'd like to know. I didn't think coyotes could run on their hind legs only. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Deidre. You know, I've heard about this sort of thing before, and one call comes to mind specifically. Lydia, who called in on Season 13, Episode 14, to share a story about what appeared to be a coyote walking on its hind legs near her Ohio farm. And of course, there are all these dogman rumors out there. But to play devil's advocate here, I should mention that it could be walking that way because of an injury. A long time ago, I reported on Petals the bipedal bear, a black bear that roamed the woods of New Jersey on his hind legs. I believe it was because of missing or underdeveloped front paws. Anyway, if a bear can do it, maybe a coyote can as well. Certainly something worth considering. And then, of course, there are those tales of skinwalkers, witches of the southwestern tribes that are said to shapeshift into different animals and behave unusually once they have. So there are some options for you, Deidre. And I'm guessing it was one of the above that caused this canine to creep on two legs. But please do us a favor. If you do figure out which theory explains this mystery, please let us know. And thank you again for calling in. Now don't go anywhere. I have plenty more where these calls came from. And I'll be right back.
Like this. Right. So, I know it may seem on the outside.
María no solamente es favores.
When they add chips and a drink.
Got that. To say to you, Coach, no, I'm totally kidding. He has said nothing but...
Now, if you don't mind, meet me up in Wisconsin, because that's where this next entry hails from. Welcome to the show, T.
Hi, Derek. This is T from Wisconsin. I got a story for you about my father when he passed away and him contacting somebody else to talk to me. It was late fall, I'd say probably September of 2015. And the last time I saw my father, who was in care after falling down and having a pretty severe injury to his ribs and whatnot, his body just started shutting down. Well, I was visiting with him at the very end, and I had to go and leave and drive back home. And he lived in North Indianapolis, Indiana. So I was down there visiting from Wisconsin. And I had to get back home for work. So as I'm with him the last 3 or 4 days I was there, he never got a chance to really sit and say, what I was needing, I guess, closure is for him to sit down and say, hey, buddy, we had a great run, didn't we? My folks were divorced when I was 10, so we were really spotty for a lot of years. But there at the very end, we did a lot together. And thought maybe I get some kind of closure out of this whole thing. But at the last minute, when I had my 10 minutes with him after everybody else had been coming and going for 3 days, he was complaining about the neighbor's dog barking instead of, kind of tying everything together. I felt, giving closure anyway. So less than a week later, he's in hospice care, and then he passed shortly thereafter. And at the time, I had spoken to him right as he was about to pass away, and he was very frail, very weak, and I knew, that was it. That was the last time, and we really never got to have that face-to-face time talk. So I didn't get the closure that I wanted, I guess. So after he passed, we were building a house at the time, and I was carrying all these wood flooring planks in from my trailer in the garage into the house to have it floored. And it was quite a bit of material. And I just used it as a way to vent and get my frustration out. So I was lugging all these huge planks of wood that are all tied together with raw oak and flopping them on the floor in there and just letting it out, what I never really got to say to him. And at one point, pardon my language, I called an asshole. And I said, I let it fly, a couple times. when I was cussing him out. And he passed away about 3 weeks before this. And I always have believed in the afterlife, and I just felt like, hey, I'm going to tell you this right now so I can get it out because I need you to know this type of thing. And I was just venting severely. And his service, we had to delay it for a while, and then we had a memorial for him where all the friends and family came and gathered in Indianapolis. And at the gathering after the service, where everybody was getting together and talking afterwards, a young lady who knew my father and I was acquainted with, who was a medium, came up to me and she said, she came up, grabbed my arm, and she said, hey, your dad came and saw me immediately after he passed away. And he said, interrupted her as she was stepping out of the shower, I guess, and he was all, hey, don't talk to me at this time right now. You know, you can't. He said, oh, that doesn't matter. That's, you know, didn't mean anything to see if somebody was naked or not, I guess, in the afterlife. And she'd asked me, she said, I got to straighten something out with you. Did you call your dad an asshole? And I just, for a second, my eyebrows went up and I looked at her and I said, yes, I did. I said multiple times as I was venting. She said, oh, okay, well, I just had to get that out and clarify because I wasn't sure if I was hearing things correctly. So I didn't think you'd ever call him that. I thought, no, I was venting. I let it out. And for her to come up, I hadn't told anybody, Derek, that I had this venting conversation with my father after he passed. Not my wife, no kids, friends, nobody. So after clarifying that he had told her, the medium, what I had said, and she asked me to clarify what she had heard correctly because she said she had to clear it up because she wasn't sure if it was what she thought she had heard him say. And then she proceeded to tell me many things that he had wished he had done before passing and why we both had gone our separate ways after the divorce and so forth. So it was an amazing moment because it was something that I had not told anybody that I had this venting conversation with him after he had passed, and yet she knew exactly what I had said, and I never prompted her. She was the one that brought it up. So it was great confirmation to me that there was more than just after you pass away. You just don't ashes, dust to dust. There's a soul that goes somewhere in the world. But yeah, I thought that would be a good story if you want to use it in your podcast. Go right ahead. I love your show. Just discovered it and totally hooked. So keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, T. You know, psychics that claim to communicate with the dead is another subject I'm on the fence about. On one hand, I see all these yahoos on TV, cold reading or just plain cheating, looking things up. Essentially, they're taking advantage of the bereaved. It's easy to sell hope to those that are looking for it. But then I hear a story like this that really can only have one explanation. And it has nothing to do with cold reading. Experiences like T's always give me pause and are the reason I haven't written off this phenomena altogether. So thank you again, T, for sharing that incredible tale. Now, moving on through my list. If the description of this next entry tells us anything, it's that we're in for a treat. Please welcome Odin to the program.
Hey Derek, this is Odin the Red again. I'm calling in with an update. So, I don't know, about a year and a half or so ago, I called in while I was working on DoorDash to report some sightings I had in the canyons between Thousand Oaks area and Malibu. Just tonight, I was down in Malibu and it was probably like upper 60s. Sky was mostly clear. Again, I was driving, so I wasn't really looking at the sky, but the sky has been mostly clear all day, so I would assume that it's still mostly clear down there as well. Anyways, a phenomenon that I have seen a few times in the canyons and the mountains in that area, which I just saw again tonight, are people or entities that look like people wearing unseasonable clothes, like clothes that would be uncomfortable for the season, who also don't have faces along the side of the road in that area tonight's sighting was around the Pacific Coast Highway. I was traveling east toward Canaan Road, and I spotted one of these entities by a bus stop. And this one was the most inhuman one that I've seen so far. It was very tall. It was almost entirely black, and it's like one leg was super long and one arm was super long. Like, it was either wearing some very kind of skin-tight outfit, or it was just a black entity, but it was wearing a massively chunky yellow scarf. And these entities don't always stand like perfectly still. They're not mannequins. I've seen them move, and this one did as well. It like took a step, almost like a curious step, from underneath the bus station platform where I saw it toward the side of the road as I was driving past. And this happened at about 8:30 tonight, which is, let's see, what's tonight? Tonight's October the 2nd, 2023. So, yeah, crazy story. It just keeps getting crazier. I don't know if anyone else has seen these things except for me, but, just gotta be the 4th, 5th, 6th one of these I've seen. Hope I get to hear more about this from someone else. Keep it going. I'll be listening. Bye.
Thank you, Odin. Well, how about it, folks? Have any of you ever seen these malformed, faceless, yellow scarf-wearing entities? Especially in the greater LA area. If so, give our hotline a ring at 888-608-NIGHT or shoot me an email at monstersamonguspodcast@gmail.com. And I'll keep my ears open, Odin. If anything of note makes its way in, you'll be the first to know. And thank you again for your unusual entry. Now, do you guys remember the Aurora Borealis reaching really far south a while back? Everyone you knew on Instagram was posting faint green lights in the sky. Well, apparently the northern lights weren't the only thing illuminating the sky that evening. Wait until you hear what Randy in California experienced that night.
Hey Derek, this is Randy in California. I'm calling because I'm a couple years behind on your show, and I was just listening to season 12, episode 13. A gentleman from Tasmania was talking about some weird flashing light he saw in the sky, and it reminded me of something I saw earlier this year. So I'm calling you 2024 September, but back on May 10th, if I'm sure everyone remembers, there was a huge electromagnetic storm, and we had the aurora coming all the way down to California and Arizona and stuff like that from that big solar storm. I was working night shift that night, so whenever I got a chance, I would sneak out of the lab and I'd go out to the helipad and I'd go stare up at the sky and try and watch the aurora. I got a few cool pictures. While I was out there one of the times, I noticed that in the center of a triangle of stars roughly to my north, I noticed a flashing, and I looked up, and right in the middle of this triangle of stars, this white light would periodically flash on and flash off. There'd be a pause, and then it would flash on and flash off. And I was looking at it, trying to wonder what it was. It was really high up in the sky. It looked too low for all the flight paths, and while I was watching it, a few different airplanes did fly by in the night sky, and they were nowhere near where that light was flashing from. And so eventually I kind of got bored of looking at it, and I just kept watching the aurora, because when am I going to see that again? But as I'm sitting there for 10 minutes, it just keeps on periodically flashing on, flashing off, flashing on, flashing off. Eventually, it goes off and it doesn't turn back on. I don't know what it was. It was kind of weird. It wasn't in the flight path of the planes. It was at least 11:30 at night, so I don't know what it would be reflecting off of. The closest thing I could think of would be some sort of geosynchronous satellite tumbling or doing some sort of being stationary but spinning around, and every once in a while it would catch sunlight from somewhere. But I don't know if a geosynchronous satellite would be that far north when I'm in Northern California. I've always assumed those were down by the equator or something like that, but I could be wrong. I don't know. And so yeah, I'm curious if anyone has any ideas of what I watched flash on and off for a good 10 or 15 minutes before it finally just stopped flashing. It never moved from its spot central to those three stars. And it's kind of funny because it was a triangle of stars, and we all hear the stories of the triangle UFOs, but I'm 99.9% sure those are real stars that were there. It's just, that just happened where the light was. It's just a funny coincidence that it happens to be in the center of that triangle, almost like the center light in some of the triangle UFOs. I'm not saying it's a UFO, I just think that it's weird and interesting, and I'd love to know what it is. You have a wonderful show. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you, Randy. Now, I doubt this was the same thing, but it was similar enough that I have to share. Some 16 or 17 years ago, myself and a couple of buddies backpacked all the way up to Dry Lake here in the San Bernardino National Forest. No, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think we made camp somewhere around 9,000 feet on a crystal clear summer night. And before we went to bed, we walked out into the center of that dry lake bed to look up at the stars. And that's when we noticed a rhythmic strobing light that lit up the entire sky around us. Now, it reminded me of those little fog flashers that sit on top of a school bus. Just a white burst of light every second or so. A flash that lit up the entire sky, ever so faintly. Now, as far as we could tell, we were above everything. Towns, houses, roads, towers. And it lasted way too long to be an airliner flying by. Now, I don't think it was paranormal in any way, but I do think it was interesting. And perhaps Randy's experience was something similar. Now, regardless of what caused either of those areas to flash with light, we thank you again, Randy, for taking the time to tell us about it. Thanks for calling in.
You know, knife in the back as he's leaving.
Well, don't worry. And join us every weekend, Saturdays at 9 a.m. And
say, well, why aren't you doing your...
We're nearing the end of tonight's collection, but fear not. I still have a few calls that'll surely chill your bones. Beginning with this entry from Bethany out of New Mexico.
Hello, my name is Bethany. I am in hardly a town about 40 miles west of Taos, New Mexico. It's called Carson, New Mexico. I have heard plenty of kind of spooky things about orbs and lights in the sky, so I was waiting to get my own experience. I did not expect this. In September, it was about 8:45 at night. I stepped out to walk the dogs one last time, and there was, I wouldn't say it was bright, it was actually very dim, whitish light. So at first I thought maybe aurora borealis. I've seen them before, but this was the closest thing. So your brain starts trying to make sense of what you're seeing. So at first, because of the way that it was light kind of shimmering through or across the sky, that's what I thought. Except they don't actually move as fast as we usually see in videos. Then it sort of turned into something that looked like electricity. So then I thought maybe I'm seeing lightning, some sort of lightning I've never seen before going through the clouds. But then it became tubes of light or what you'd expect from enormous flashlights or event lights out of some sort of big celebrity event. But where I am, that wouldn't be a thing. So then it became shapes, like the spotlights became shapes, honestly looked like scissors in a sense, and then they moved like scissors if you were to move, close and open scissors in the sky. And then within the outline of this scissor design were other shapes. And if I had to describe them, I would say it almost looked like something out of the Independence Day movie with Will Smith. Their alien spaceship had kind of like weird designs inside of the spaceship. So I did this for a bit. I had enough time to go inside and get my phone and call a few people because I didn't know what I was seeing. It went on for maybe 15 minutes, going between different shapes. And when it was the spotlights, the mountains to the east of me, it's Taos Mountain, the lights themselves, the spotlights were about as far apart if you were to extend your hand, spread your fingers. So the lights seemed to be shooting up with little less than an inch between them, which at that distance would mean they were incredibly far apart. Nobody else knows what I'm talking about. I've asked a few people, and I've scoured the internet looking for some sort of event that took up the Taos night sky. There was a light show a couple days after what I saw, but that light show was more like art installations on the ground, not this size. And again, it's such a small town, small community that if somebody was putting on this big event, there would be some kind of discussion. It would probably even be in the newspaper. But between the spotlights being so far apart and taking up so much of the sky and lasting for so long, I have no idea what to make of it. I've never heard of anything quite like that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Bethany. Well, there's one that's got me stumped. I had the same initial thought it sounds like Bethany had. It has to be event lights, right? Spotlights, searchlights, promotional lights. Something to promote an event. But it sounds like Bethany is fairly certain that that's not what it was. And the description that she gave of them rocking back and forth in a scissoring motion. In order to achieve that, I feel like it would have to be something mobile, either on the ground or in the sky. And they would have to be moving decent distances to sell the effect. Because I don't think a jaunt across a Walmart parking lot is going to create this effect. I'm thinking you'll likely have to go miles to get each beam of light to move enough to give the illusion that they cut like scissors. Now maybe someone in the Taos area can help us, shed some light on this mystery. If you think you know what's going on, give us a call at 888-6089. Until then, however, thank you again, Bethany, for sharing your entry. Over the years, there's been all kinds of UFO activity from the state of New Mexico. So who knows what this was? And who knows what this next caller saw? Tyler from Oregon. Welcome to the show.
Hi, this is Tyler from Oregon. I was just listening to Season 10, Episode 14, and a guy mentioned that he had seen a shadow entity when he was a kid that would stand at his door. And he would basically play chicken with it and see how long he could stare at it before it got too close to him that he had to close his eyes. And once he would close his eyes and open them again, it'd be back to where it started. Well, it made me think of an experience that happened to me very similar to that when I was a kid. I've never really talked to it because I didn't really think anyone had ever experienced it or, would even believe me. But when he said that, I was really shocked. I remember my wife and I was like, "Hey, listen to this." But, when I was a kid, probably about 6, maybe 7, I was still living with my mom and dad, and we had a bunk bed in mine and my brother's room. They slept on the bottom bunk because, they were twins and everything, but they slept on the bottom, and I slept on the top. Our bunk bed was in the right-hand side of the bedroom, not all the way up against the wall, but far enough away where you could walk between the wall and the bed, and so forth. Our room was very empty. It didn't really have anything in it except the bed. And then you had the door all the way in the front of the room to the left, and then you had a closet to the right. Well, when I was a kid, I would stare over by the closet in the pitch black, and we'd have the moonlight kind of coming in from the side because there was a window on the right wall right next to us. My head would be facing that window. I would be staring at the closet, and I would see this about 3-foot tall figure standing at the end of my room, just shaking and shivering and just moving really terrifyingly. It freaked me out really bad. And I would stare at it, and the longer I stared at it, the more it moved towards me, and the faster it moved towards me. And I would only stare at it for like 5 seconds to be able to look at it move like that, and then it would start charging at me, and I'd close my eyes, and I would open them again, and it would be right back where it started. And again, I would stare at it for like 5 seconds, and it would just move all terrifyingly. And then it would just start sprinting at me as fast as it could. It was lanky-armed, couldn't really make out many figures. It had a massive smile on its face that I remember being toothy, but I don't know if I just made that part up over, it being a really old memory, but I do remember a smile for certain, and it was sinister. It scared me so bad. And the reason I know that it was a smile was because one night, after weeks of this happening, I decided to keep my eyes open for the entirety of it. And I did. And it sprinted towards me, and it went out of my sight because it went straight at the kids' beds, right underneath me and my brother's. And it was gone. I couldn't see it anymore, and I thought maybe it just went after them. Or maybe it wasn't real. When all of a sudden, right in front of my face, pops this little face, and it just has its head jerking back and forth. Really freaky movements, and just smiling. And I closed my eyes so tight after staring at this thing for 2-3 seconds in shock that it just popped up right there. And I'm pretty sure I started crying. And I opened my eyes, and it was back where it started, and I rolled over, and I never looked back at that wall again. I don't know if it went away. I don't know if it's still there. But I never looked at that wall again at night. It freaked me out so bad, and still gives me shivers to think about today. But it was really nice hearing that that guy had gone through that experience too, because I thought I was alone in that. It was pretty cool.
Thank you, Tyler. That is chilling. And I hope the story makes its way to that caller from Season 10, Episode 14. It might make him feel a little better, knowing that he's not alone in experiencing something so sinister. Now, I feel like this has to be either Tyler's imagination, some sort of sleep paralysis, or something supernatural, because this is somewhat of a controlled environment, the bedroom. It's not like wild animals are roaming in there or anything. And it's not like strange people make their way in there in the middle of the night either. Or at least they shouldn't be. So like most of tonight's calls, this one too will remain a mystery. But we do thank you again, Tyler, for taking the time to tell us all about it. And that's going to do it for this portion of the program. But stick around until after the credits, the outro, and the final ad, because I have info on how you can get more Monsters Among Us for free. But first, Monsters Among Us is written and produced by me, Derek Hayes. Copyright Red Crow Media. Additional support is provided by Sarah Carter Hayes and Delaney Bowers. All media used in this production is done so under the protection of fair use. Please give us a like and follow on our social media accounts. Hit us up on YouTube if you can, and leave us a rate and review wherever that sort of thing is possible. Don't forget you can catch the show every Saturday evening at 11 p.m. Eastern on the UNX Network. Just visit unxnetwork.com to learn more. And finally, tonight's score was provided by Iron Cthulhu Apocalypse, Co.eg Music, and Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. And there it is, folks. Another grab bag in the bag. I had a lot of fun with this one, and I hope you guys did too. And before I go, don't forget to check out our film, Shadows in the Desert, High Strangeness in the Borrego Triangle. Just visit borregotriangle.com to learn where you can catch it. And lastly, David and I were on Belief Hole podcast recently, where we discussed our film, Shadows in the Desert. The boys at Belief Hole put on a great program, and we had an amazing time hanging out with them. Now, if you've seen the film, you'll love the extra info. And if you haven't seen it, I think it'll make you want to. Now, you can catch that interview on Belief Hole's YouTube, or you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. I also put a link in the show notes. All right, folks, don't go anywhere, because it ain't over yet. I'll be right back.
Merry Christmas to you. Good to be with you as always.
It's simple. And this is what we used to do.
To your bathroom. It also conveniently charges with a USB cord.
Now, have you ever zoned out while driving? You kind of come to and realize you don't remember the last 10 or 15 minutes. Or miles, even. Well, Jay from Arkansas has taken that experience to a whole new level.
Hey, Derek. Love the show. My name is Jay from Arkansas. My story happened about 20 miles northeast of Chester, Arkansas, where there was another call years ago about a train conductor who saw a girl on the train tracks. Well, I think I may have seen something similar to that. I was driving through a dirt road way back in the hills of the Ozarks, about an hour from the nearest paved road, and I came across this little graveyard that had a bunch of old graves in it, and I stopped to stretch my legs. Some of them were really old. They looked like kind of like Stonehenge, kind of like the slabs of rock, and they didn't have markings on them, and they were just on this hilltop. It was really nice. You know, sunset, just a beautiful day. So I drove up this road where there were some abandoned farms, and I came upon one that wasn't abandoned, but the road was so rocky that I had to go very slow, and I didn't want to, draw their attention or anything out in the country, so I just was driving by, but I saw something out of the corner of my eye that looked like a girl in a white house dress, like an old house dress, with her arms straight out in a T, standing in front of this big picture window of this old farmhouse. Against my better judgment, I looked over at her, and there was nothing there. But as soon as I turned my head, I flew across the yard, up into the window, through the window, and I was hovering above this dinner table where there were food items on the table, like people had just finished eating, and there was a wall of photographs, and I could look down and see my legs swinging under me. It was bizarre. This was happening in an instant. As soon as I could even think of what is happening to me, I noticed these pictures on the wall. One of them came into focus, and it was these people standing by a seaside. And as soon as it came into focus, I went right into the picture just like I had gone into this house. And then I was hovering above these people, getting their picture taken by the seaside and this lighthouse. As soon as I could think, like, what is happening, I had no idea what was going on. I could feel the steering wheel under my fingernails, and I just dug my fingernails into the steering wheel as hard as I could, and everything stopped. And I was back in my car, kind of rolling at about 2 or 3 miles an hour up this really rocky road. And I got the worst feeling that if I were to look back over my shoulder, that girl was standing in front of the window again with her arms up. But I was petrified. And I'm not like a scared person, but all I could think was to just look straight ahead and get out of there as quickly as I could. So that's my story. Up until that point, I would have told you that there's no such thing as psychic phenomenon or whatever. I have no idea what that was, what I was supposed to get from that. I don't know. I didn't feel any particular emotions other than like I got ambushed and like I needed to get out of there. But I didn't feel any like emotions, or I didn't smell anything or hear anything. It was completely a visual experience. And like I said, I'm an airline pilot. I don't do drugs or drink or anything. I was just trying to decompress, cruising through the country, listening to podcasts. So anyway, I love the show. Keep up the good work. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jay. Astral projection is what this sounds like to me. The act of removing one's consciousness from the body to then travel throughout the world, free from earthly tethers. It's sort of like a psychic ability, but not one I recommend doing while driving. But regardless, it's interesting stuff, Jay. Especially the part about you traveling into the photograph that you saw. That would imply some sort of time travel as well, I think. But that's a subject for another day. Until then, thank you again, Jay, for calling in. Alright, folks, now is the time. We're going beyond. The after show that we put on each and every Thursday. Join the $5 level on Patreon or through the subscription on Apple Podcast to gain access to the beyond, where we share calls like Courtney's from deep South Alabama.
Hi, this is Courtney from South Alabama, and I have a UFO story. It's actually my brother-in-law's UFO story because it happened to him, but it happened on my property, and I'm the first person that he immediately told when it happened. So when I say South Alabama, I mean deep South Alabama. We are very, very rural on the 2-mile stretch of road that I guess you could call it our neighborhood. There's about 12 houses, and the rest is farming fields. It's flat farming fields as far as you can see. But behind me, my backyard's about 2 acres, and it's a field. And that backs up to my neighbor's backyard, of part of their backyard, which is 6 acres maybe, and it's a field. And then after that, that hits the woods, and there's just trees and woods behind me. And we have a lot of water.